Have you ever wondered how cool buildings of the future are gonna look? Well, hold on tight because artificial intelligence is here to revolutionize the world of architecture. AI is a great sidekick. It can give the architects incredible new tools to create mind-blowing structures that are not only stunning, but also eco-friendly and super efficient. So let's check what our beautiful future might look like. First of all, you know how cities can get crazy busy and overwhelming, right? Well, guess what? AI is here to save the day and make our cities super smart. Imagine you're cruising down the road in your flying car. Yes, we'll have those. Thanks to AI, the traffic flows like a dream. No more endless gridlock. The city knows where the most likely crime spots are and takes proactive steps to keep us safe. It's like having superheroes on every corner. And hey, forget about trash piling up. AI makes sure waste is managed efficiently, keeping our city clean and fresh. They can act as a city manager who can optimize everything from traffic to safety and even waste disposal. They can analyze tons of data from all sorts of places like sensors and social media. With all that information, they can help city planners make brilliant decisions that make our lives better. Okay, so you stroll down the street, and your eyes are instantly captivated by an extraordinary building. Its futuristic curves and features make it stand out from the rest. And it not only catches your eye, but also gives Mother Nature a high five. You might think it was designed by a genius architect, but little do you know it was actually a collaboration between humans and artificial intelligence. Imagine having a super smart design buddy who can whip up thousands of incredible building ideas in a blink of an eye. That's what AI-assisted design software does for architects. It can generate and assess a ton of design options. They take into account stuff like the best materials to use and the perfect placement for the building. Also, by analyzing data and crunching numbers, algorithms can help optimize the building's design. They can ensure it minimizes energy usage, conserves water, and manages waste like a pro. Every building strives to reduce costs, save energy, and promote a better world. The result? Architectural masterpieces that are both jaw-droppingly beautiful and super practical. The cityscape of the future will be dotted with these awe-inspiring structures. Oh, but that wasn't impressive enough for you? Well, how about a stunning, futuristic building that seems to defy gravity? It's not made of traditional bricks and mortar. Oh no! This marvel was created using the powers of 3D printing. With the help of AI, architects designed every intricate detail and fed all the important data, like what materials to use and how the site conditions might affect the structure. AI algorithms worked their magic to optimize the design, making it both breathtakingly beautiful and rock solid. 3D printing is basically like having a magical machine that can create awesome structures straight out of a sci-fi movie, and AI jumps in to make sure these structures are not just pretty, but also strong. In the city of the future, 3D printing will become the ultimate architect's tool. It will allow them to create structures that were once impossible to build. From mind-bending shapes to intricate details, the possibilities are endless. But AI isn't just making buildings look great, it also makes them efficient and cozy. Let's say you step into a futuristic office building, and voila! The lights automatically adjust to match your mood, and the temperature is set perfectly for you. These futuristic buildings are capable of sensing and responding to their surroundings, just like you do. They control the lighting, keeping it just right for the time of day. They manage the temperature, so it's always cozy and comfortable. They even keep a watchful eye on security and fix small issues before they become big headaches. So, the smart building knows when people come and go, so it optimizes energy usage accordingly, saving the planet and some cash along the way. Now the cool thing is, all these aren't the only possibilities. How about turning skyscrapers into a vertical forest? Recently, an architect from India got super excited about the power of artificial intelligence. So, he decided to team up with an image bot called Midjourney to create a vision for the future. But instead of a dull, robotic world, they aimed for something spectacular. With text prompts like utopian technology and futuristic towers, the architect and AI got to work. Guess what? Midjourney didn't disappoint. It conjured up a world where buildings were covered in lush vertical forests and adorned with shapes inspired by nature. They wanted to create a sustainable future that harmonized with the environment. The architect, Manas Bhatia, is super positive about AI's potential. He doesn't see it as a threat to his job, but as a powerful tool for positive change. He envisions a future where architects and AI collaborate to make breathtaking designs. In his project, Patya even asked the AI to imagine symbiotic and hollowed structures, and it responded with pictures of apartments nestled within hollowed-out trees. Imagine a world where the building itself becomes a living, breathing part of nature. Well, Bhatia believes that nature should play a big role in architecture. He loves designing structures that embrace nature's beauty and functionality. From buildings built around trees to facades that regulate temperature, he's all about blending architecture with the natural world. With architects like Bhatia and the superpowers of AI, the future of cities is going to be amazing. So get ready to step into a world where nature and technology coexist in perfect harmony. It's a dream we can't wait to see come true. Or, if you're not a big fan of trees, how about this? Skyscrapers that aren't made of solid bricks, but instead, they're inflatable wonders. Zumo, an architectural practice in Barcelona, used the magic of AI to bring these wobbly structures to life. These inflatable superstructures rise above future cities like illuminated balloons in the sky. Here's the best part. These inflatable buildings have sustainability superpowers. You can pump them up to towering heights, flatten them for easy transportation, and rebuild them wherever they're needed. Plus, they're powered by renewable energy, reducing their impact on the environment. Pretty cool, right? Phew. The future is zooming toward us like a rocket. Artificial intelligence can become the secret sauce that makes architects' work extra special. But hey, with great power comes great responsibility. We need to use AI wisely and ethically. For now, we don't have to worry about machines replacing architects. Artificial intelligence still needs a human hand, or else we might end up with buildings that look like mashed up bananas or ice cream cones, unless that's your thing. In addition, humans have one important advantage. They, well, are humans. We need to keep in mind that artificial intelligence doesn't have emotional intelligence. It's a brainy genius, but it can't fully understand the feelings and vibes we humans crave in our spaces. So, we must remember to infuse our designs with that human touch, those warm and fuzzy elements that make us go, "Ah, I feel right at home." And let's not forget that AI is still learning. It's basically just taking its first steps, and we need to be patient and give it time to grow. Rushing things too quickly could lead to wonky designs or buildings that look like a jumbled puzzle. This might look cool if you like avant-garde architecture, but for regular folk, no thanks. So, as the future unfolds at warp speed, let's embrace the wonders of AI in architecture. But let's also remember to balance its brilliance with our own human touch. Together, we can create a future where buildings are not just functional, but also filled with heart and soul. It's an adventure that's out of this world. Imagine that it's the year 2025, and our planet has completely changed. Rising sea levels, extreme weather, and the ocean becoming more and more acidic are just some of the problems people have been dealing with for years. But in one of the world's largest coastal cities, the situation has become too serious. It was a sunny day in June when a massive earthquake shook the city to its core. The ground beneath people's feet heaved and shook, and buildings swayed dangerously. People ran through the streets in panic, trying to find safety. But as soon as the ground settled, the inhabitants of the city realized the real danger. A wall of water, almost 100 feet high, was rushing toward the city, propelled by the force of the earthquake. The tsunami hit the city with unimaginable force. Entire neighborhoods were wiped out, and thousands of people lost their lives. But here's where things get interesting. In the aftermath of the disaster, the city's authorities realized that they couldn't just rebuild the city as it was before. They needed to be better prepared for the next potential disaster. And so they came up with an incredibly ambitious project to build an underwater city. The goal was to create a self-sufficient, sustainable city beneath the ocean's surface that could withstand any natural disaster. The underwater city would be powered by renewable energy, using tidal power and underwater solar panels. It would be designed to withstand extreme weather and would have its own emergency response systems. The project attracted some of the world's top scientists, engineers, and architects. They worked tirelessly to design the city and carefully considered every aspect of the project. The underwater city would have everything that a typical city had, from schools and hospitals to stores and restaurants. There would be underwater farms where fish and other marine creatures could grow. The city would even have its transportation system, advanced submarines and underwater tunnels connecting different parts of the city. The project became a shining beacon of hope for people. It showed that even in the face of disaster, we could come together to create something amazing. But as time went on, the project no longer seemed so perfect. The cost of the project turned out to be higher than planned. There were also concerns about how long such a project would exist. After all, the ocean is very unpredictable. And still, the team of scientists and engineers never gave up. After years of trial and error, they finally created the perfect underwater city, a marvel of engineering, a self-contained ecosystem that could sustain people indefinitely. The buildings were constructed from a material that could withstand the immense pressure at the bottom of the ocean, and the city itself was powered by a network of advanced hydroelectric turbines. It wasn't long before the first wave of colonists arrived at the underwater city. There were different people in this group, and each of them had their own reasons for choosing to live in this new world beneath the waves. Some were adventurers seeking a new world to explore, while others were hoping to escape natural disasters raging on dry land. But despite their differences, all these people shared a common goal: to build a new society, one that was in harmony with the natural world. The underwater city flourished, and new discoveries were made every day. The colonists developed new technologies and ways to tame the power of the ocean. They learned to farm the sea and started cultivating underwater gardens that provided them with a steady food supply. But living underwater was challenging. People felt isolated and even claustrophobic. The situation came to a head when a group of activists started to protest against the city's expansion plans. They argued that the underwater city was a threat to the environment it was meant to protect, and that the colonists should focus on reducing their impact on the delicate underwater life. The protests sparked a heated debate among the colonists. Some of them argued that the survival of the city depended on its growth and expansion. Others claimed that the city needed to prioritize the protection of the environment above all else. In the end, a compromise was reached. The city would continue to expand, but the main priority would be sustainability and a responsible attitude to nature. The colonists would do their best to reduce their impact on the environment by using new technologies and following strict conservation rules. And they would also remember the importance of protecting the ocean and its fragile ecosystem. Years went by, and the underwater city continued to thrive. New generations of colonists were born, and they grew up in a world entirely different from the one their ancestors had known. They never saw the world on the surface, but appreciated the beauty and complexity of the underwater world they called home. And as the years passed, the city became a symbol of hope for a world struggling with the devastating effects of climate change. It showed that despite all difficulties, people could come together to create a better world. It is a reminder that the future is not set in stone, and that we can build it sustainably and in harmony with the natural world.
Let's see now. Mobile phones, remote surgery, communication satellites. You think it's just another science show on TV. But wait, the image on the screen is black and white. A middle-aged man wearing glasses is talking. It's a BBC documentary from 1964. The man's name is Arthur C. Clarke. Yep, that's the guy who helped Kubrick make the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. You up the volume and can't believe your own ears. Clarke is describing our present as if he were right next to you. So, what exactly is he saying? The world in which we can instantly contact each other. This is a no-brainer. Clarke was talking about messaging apps. He spoke about how we would be able to contact our friends anywhere on Earth. And the best part is, we wouldn't have to know where they were. Yup, that sounds a lot like using a smartphone. Mr. Clarke, you won't even have to know your friend's number. The device will remember it for you. The phones in the 1960s weren't that advanced. This was the time when manufacturers were just starting to move from rotary dial phones to push-button ones. But Clarke saw further in the future of communication. He told a tale of how a person would be able to conduct business from Haiti or Bali as if they were in London. It was a BBC show, so don't be surprised he mentions the English capital. Anyone who's ever Zoomed or Skyped knows what the man was talking about. Digital nomads were hard to imagine 60 years ago. There was no other way to earn money but to have a 9-to-5 job. Today, you can open your laptop and work from anywhere on the planet. Next up, brain surgeons in Edinburgh operating on patients in New Zealand. Those were Clark's exact words. He was right about this as well. Remote surgery became very real in 2001. A doctor who was in New York operated on a patient in France. How, you may ask? Robotics is the short answer. Did you ever have one of those remote control toys? The basic principle is the same. A surgeon controls a robotic arm performing the surgery. For this, they don't have to be present in the operating room. They can even be on another continent. Clark was spot on with this prediction. Don't commute, communicate. Sounds like an advertising slogan, right? Close enough. This is another example of how Clark saw it all. Recently, workers across the globe got used to remote work. Now they're simply refusing to return to the office. The least they'll accept is hybrid work. That's where you work from your bed for 4 days and then drop by the office one day to say hello. This would have been impossible in the 60s. I mean, you could stay at home, but then you wouldn't get paid. And this is not the end of Clark's predictions that came true. He was a pioneer in predicting the future. In 1945, he wrote an essay called Wireless World. A great title if we take into account that the first Wi-Fi network appeared in 1997. But what was this essay about? Nothing much, just about launching communication satellites into orbit. But wait a second, that was more than a decade before the first artificial satellite started orbiting the Earth. Wow, impressive. Okay, but it's not like Arthur C. Clarke predicted the invention of the internet or something. Well, he did. In 1974, he described a device called console that every home would have. No, he wasn't talking about a gaming console. This console would have a TV screen and a typewriter keyboard, and people would get information from it. Isn't this a desktop computer? Of course it is, but explained in the 70s terms. Clarke could have also added the mouse as well. I mean, he got everything else right. He also predicted what this console/PC would be used for: getting bank statements, booking theater tickets, and browsing the news. This is exactly what we use computers and smartphones for today. And how do we do it? Google search. Arthur Clarke had a vision of what a search engine would look like. Is there anything this man couldn't predict? Well, he believed cities would completely disappear, but they are only getting bigger. The World Bank estimates that nearly 56% of the world's population lives in cities today. This figure will only increase in the future. Sorry, Mr. Clarke, that was a complete miss. Then there are borderline cases. The man spoke about a replicator. Sounds like a gadget from a Bugs Bunny cartoon. That's because it is. A machine that creates instant copies of everything is a bit off the charts. But, to be honest, we have 3D printers today, although they're not as sophisticated as Clarke's replicator. But who knows? This prophecy may come true in a decade or two. The British writer wasn't the only daydreamer of the period. Walter Cronkite, America's favorite TV anchor, also had a go at predicting the future. Just 3 years after Clarke's show aired on the BBC, Cronkite hosted a show called The 21st Century. The goal? To show viewers what a 21st century home would look like. And he was strangely good at it. Let's start with his vision of the living room. Full-color, big 3D television screen? Check. Console controls that operate various gadgets? Check. Music that plays from speakers at a push of a button? Check. Now, I could be wrong, but did Cronkite just describe a home entertainment system? I think so. Hungry for more? Step into the imaginary kitchen from the year 2001. The plates are made from plastic on the spot. Okay, that one was a bit off, but you can still buy disposable plates at the supermarket. That was not the case in the 60s. Also, you had to clean the house yourself back then, or hire help. Well, Cronkite and his guests hoped this would change. They spoke of small-scale robots that would accept instructions. They could even be programmed not to bump into humans while cleaning the home. And finally, these tiny robots wouldn't have to look anything like us. You're probably staring at the robot vacuum cleaner in the corner right now. Now let's talk business. The show imagined the home office with a futuristic printer. It would receive data from satellites and print our newspaper. Sounds naive enough today, but keep in mind that the first laser printer appeared half a decade after the show aired. There was also talk of a closed-circuit camera system. These intercom systems are in every home today. 60 years ago, you had to use a peephole to see who was at the door. But the most mysterious gadget Cronkite mentions is an electronic correspondence machine. They didn't explain its functions on the show, but it's possible they were referring to a smartphone. At the time, the TV remote controller was all but perfect, so this gadget seemed even more impressive. Okay, we all know what you've been waiting for. Flying cars, right? Yes, Cronkite included this prediction in his other show, this time about the 20th century. Every now and then there's news of a tech startup constructing a flying car, but it turns out to be a bust every single time. We can still only dream about taking off and flying over a traffic jam. The show from the 60s got some things about cars right, though. Inflated pillows? They were probably referring to airbags, but misspoke. Cronkite also predicted anti-lock brakes. Manufacturers started installing these into cars decades later. Then there was cruise control and motion sensors. Tracking the distance to the car in front of you seems common today. In the 1960s, however, drivers could only dream about such a function. How many times have you heard your grandparents say how everything was of better quality back in their time? Well, this isn't always a good thing. Traffic signs were solid, so a car would be severely damaged if it hit them. Cronkite accurately predicted that modern road signs would be intentionally weakened to fail and save the driver's life.
Want to catch a glimpse of what flying might look like in the future? Then you're in the right place. Economy class lie-flat bunk beds, vertical flying vehicles, AI-powered in-flight meal service. Buckle up and let's start our flight. But first, I need to ask you, have you ever heard of the Crystal Cabin Awards? Oh, those are like the Oscars of aviation interior design. And here are some of the most recent winners. Meet Skynest, a lie-flat bed for people traveling in economy class. These nests are supposed to be used on long-haul flights. The design is based on a sleep pod island located in the middle of the plane. And you can book a 4-hour time slot if you want to take a real nap during your flight. The best news is that this design is likely to be introduced next year. While traveling in premium economy on long routes, you'll be able to use smarter seating design. It includes wider seats and twin armrests, which means no more fighting for space with your neighbors. Plus, there will be fully flexible rows with cushions that can be elevated, creating lie-flat beds. Lufthansa Group has promised that premium passengers will be able to book suites with double beds and travel on temperature-controllable heated or cooled seats. As you see, these days, airline companies are working hard on new designs of aircraft cabins, and it might impact the entire future of air travel. At the moment, they focus on travelers' experience within the walls of the plane. As a result, we have some mind-boggling products. Check out Singapore Airlines first-class suites, or Air France's La Première cabin, which is believed to become one of the best first-class cabins in the skies. It's going to feature suites equipped with separate sofas and chairs, and each suite will have 5 windows along the cabin wall. This will make it the longest first-class suite in the world. But then, Airbus went and patented the idea of a more interactive flight experience, especially for those lucky passengers occupying window seats. With the help of special eye-tracking equipment, the aircraft might be able to highlight significant objects you're looking at and provide you with detailed information, appearing on a semi-transparent display on the window. The patent also claims that you could send data to devices connected by Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. This way, takeoffs and landings would get much more exciting, and you'd be able to get information about a new country or city. Qatar Airlines, in turn, came up with the idea of Q suites. It looks like this. On the sides, you have individual suites, while the middle part can be transformed. You can choose to have a double suite to travel together with your partner, or you can have some private space, or even move the walls and turn the place into a quad suite that you can use for a meeting. There might also be some improvements in economy class. They're bound to bring more comfort, especially on a long-haul flight. A company called Zodiac Seats filed a patent based on a zigzag configuration of seats. Look at this aisle, which contains 3 and 4 seats, with each of them facing in the opposite direction. This allows for way more shoulder space than regular seating. Plus, passengers have a lot of leg space. Yes, some people might feel a bit uncomfortable having to face their neighbor for more than 8 hours straight, but aren't these space improvements worth it? Now, you might know that moving around the cabin while flight attendants are serving meals and beverages is kind of tricky. Plus, you have to eat at a specific time with everyone else. Or, if you're not feeling hungry, forego the meal altogether. Well, robots might be the solution. One company has suggested using perfectly sized pods that could slide along the rail in the middle of the aisle, delivering drinks and food ordered by passengers. This way, you could get your meal at the most suitable time for you without leaving your seat. This solution is likely to solve the problems with meal service. Even better, it might allow for fewer galleys in large planes. Unfortunately, this idea was filed 60 years ago and hasn't been implemented yet, so maybe it's not as great as it sounds. Another idea connected with in-flight meal service includes using AI. According to its creators, the technology will record what passengers leave on their trays, and later use this data to suggest various catering plans on subsequent flights. Now, even though these innovations sound like they're going to make traveling way more comfortable, they're not exactly revolutionary. But look at these innovations: vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. Hyundai Transys's air taxi cabin concept optimizes space and prioritizes your privacy in a shared cabin. If we talk about short flights, there's City Airbus Next Gen. That's an all-electric, vertical takeoff and landing vehicle with 4 seats based on the lift and cruise concept. It can operate within the range of 50 miles and has a cruise speed of 74 miles per hour. Another amazing prospect is passenger aircraft with AI co-pilots, or even pilots. Some experts claim that planes could potentially be flown on a fully automated basis. Not everyone agrees with this idea, though. A skilled pilot is part of a complicated safety system that reduces risks and keeps passengers safe. Pilots have to be navigators, technicians, engineers, and weather experts. On a regular working day, a pilot needs to deal with ground crew, other air crew, cabin crew, air traffic control, and passengers. That's a lot. And don't forget that they need to communicate well, not only in aviation terms, but also on an interpersonal level. Will AI be able to do the same? Time will tell. But let's get back to the boldest ideas about the future of air travel. Some experts think that sometime around 2040, you'll be able to catch a hypersonic plane ride. Lots of people believe that the era of supersonic planes finished in 2003 when the Concorde commercial airplane was decommissioned after decades of being unprofitable. But it seems the situation might change soon. New supersonic aircraft will fly at incredible heights, and their speed is likely to be at least 6 times the speed of any other passenger plane. Traveling from New York to London, in this case, will take less than 2 hours. By comparison, these days it takes a conventional airplane 8 hours to fly from one of these cities to the other. There is one problem, though. The supersonic plane tickets will cost a lot, and statistically, people tend to prioritize price over speed. So experts don't think that a lot of people will be eager to pay a few $1,000s to get from London to Sydney in 4 hours. Plus, such planes will need a lot of liquid hydrogen fuel, and at the moment, it's not cheap. By the way, you might not recognize a plane from 2050. These flying machines will keep changing for the next several decades, and the chances are high that, at some moment, windows will start to disappear from airplanes altogether. This way, aircraft will become stronger and better suited for high speeds. Windows make planes heavier, which results in larger fuel consumption. No wonder cargo planes don't have windows. Planes will also become sleeker and will likely be covered with solar panels. There's also a concept of a plane with its cabin made out of transparent polymers. I don't know about you, but I don't think I'd ever board such a plane. Talk about aerophobia. The chances are that in a few decades, we'll see a hypersonic plane with a jet engine that can turn into a rocket that can fly into space. Liquid oxygen would get injected into the exhaust, turning the engine into a rocket. It would help the aircraft reach enormous speeds, and on the way back, the engine would turn into a regular jet engine once again.
The only life that we are certain about so far in the entire universe is on planet Earth. Whether that life is intelligent is, let's say, arguable. But anyway, it's not surprising that we're tirelessly searching for life on other planets. So far, they've discovered more than 4,000 of them. But what's even cooler, NASA has compiled a new list of 24 planets that aren't just Earth-like, they're better. The conditions on them are so good that they're more comfortable than on our planet. So let's examine some of them. KOI 5715.01. Let's be coy, shall we? This wonderful planet is in the constellation Cygnus. And why is it so wonderful? Well, our sun is a yellow dwarf. And sorry, son, even though you're not bad at supporting life, there are some stars that can do it better. Nothing personal. The planet KOI 5715.01 orbits near an orange dwarf. Orange dwarfs are stars slightly smaller than our sun and have a little lower luminosity. Did you like the alliteration there? Anyway, don't worry, it doesn't mean we're going to live in complete darkness. In fact, if the planet is found closer to the sun and it has a thicker atmosphere, it may even be lighter and more colorful than on Earth. Now, our sun has a very short lifespan. Right now, it has 7 to 8 billion years left to live, a little longer than Earth's age. But orange dwarfs can live from 45 to 70 billion years. This is great not only because we'll be able to hang out on this planet longer, but also because the planets around these stars have more time to form life. Now, ideally, we would need to find a planet next to an orange dwarf that is about 7 billion years old. It's very likely there will be at least some organisms there. KOI 5715.01 is about 5.5 billion years old. Yeah, it may not seem mature enough, but that's okay, neither do I. Our Earth is a billion years younger, and that didn't stop us. The planet is quite close to its star and is in a habitable zone. 1 year there lasts 190 days. Imagine going to elementary school and already getting a driver's license. It's almost 2 times larger than the Earth. The average temperature there is 52 degrees Fahrenheit, which is slightly less than ours, 57. But it mostly feels warmer there because strong gravity helps it hold on to heat in the atmosphere longer. It's a little too far away though, like 3,000 light-years from Earth, which is about 18 quadrillion miles. Yep, better bring a really big lunch with you. KOI 3010.01. This planet is found next to the star KOI 2010. This planet sounds like a very pleasant world. The average temperature on this planet is 67 degrees, so a little warmer than ours, but that's a good thing. Scientists believe that on a perfect planet, the temperature should be just about 10 degrees hotter than on Earth. The more heat there is on the planet, the more comfortable it is to live there. Also, the higher chances of developing life. The radius of this planet is nearly 1.5 times larger than Earth. There's some atmosphere, although we're not yet sure about its composition, but it's probably like the Earth's. Scientists think that we'll find an ocean there, and it can cover up to 60% of the surface, which is also cool. In a perfect world, water and land should be distributed more evenly than on our planet. A little more land means a little more territory and resources, right? But listen, this planet is actually very similar to the Earth. The semblance is so striking that scientists believe we have an 84% chance to find life there. Of course, not necessarily an intelligent life, but at least some animals. Wouldn't that be cool? Now, what do you think they could look like? Very Earth-like planet, but with stronger gravity. Well, if someone lives there, they're probably big but have a small height and strong little legs. Sounds adorable and scary. But we won't be able to find out the truth anytime soon. So far, for us, these planets are microscopic dots in space. We only have some dry, boring data about them and don't even know what they look like. We'll have to wait until we can find a way to get closer to these planets. Kepler 186f. This is also one of the best candidates for having life. This rather cute planet was nicknamed the Earth's cousin because it does have a strong resemblance. Anyway, these two planets are like sisters, not twins. Kepler 186f rotates near a red dwarf. Red dwarfs are stars even dimmer and smaller than orange dwarfs. Yeah, they'll also live for a very, very long time, but their luminosity is also quite low. However, Kepler 186f is closer to its star than we're to our Sun, so it shouldn't be too dark there. Well, at least not night-like dark. The sky on this planet is sure to be an unusual shade of red, like sunsets on Earth. What do you think? Would you like to live on a planet with an eternal sunset? The size of this planet is about the same as Earth. Not bad, not perfect. Why so? Because the coolest planets are those that are bigger than Earth and have stronger gravity. Now you'll probably say, but wouldn't it be harder to walk there and even harder to get out of bed on Monday? Of course. But on the other hand, this planet will pull the atmosphere better. The atmosphere will be thicker and denser. This means more protection from the scary space stuff, more oxygen, and more heat. Not to mention the fact that the bigger planets have more space to settle. Awesome, right? But, of course, the Earth's size is also an excellent choice. Another cool fact is that the tilt of Kepler 186f is about the same as ours. It means that there should be stable seasons and a normal day-night cycle. Do you know how important the tilt of the planet is? Let's look at Mars. Mars is also, in fact, found in the habitable zone of our Sun, but its tilt is very unstable, and as a result, the entire ocean that could have been on it once now completely dried up. Today, it's just a red desert, and there's no life there. At least not as far as we know, but you see how important these tiny details are? This planet is also quite far away from us, 490 light-years. That's about 3 quadrillion miles. So yeah, we're just going to keep waiting for intergalactic travel. Kepler 62e and 62f. These planets were called the most Earth-like before we discovered Kepler 186f. They're very comparable to our home. Kepler 62e is about 1.5 times larger than Earth, and Kepler 62f is just slightly smaller than that. They're located in the constellation Lyra, which is about 1,200 light-years away from us. They both also orbit a red dwarf. 1 year on Kepler 62e lasts about 122 days, even less than on that first planet we talked about. Scientists believe that both 62e and 62f are sort of water worlds, warm places mostly, or even completely covered with water. If there is land there, it's probably just some islands. A world consisting entirely of islands. A fantasy dream for some, think Hawaii, and a nightmare for others, think Megalodon. But if you're a fan of ancient marine animals, just imagine how gigantic they could be there. Still, there are many things we don't know about this planet. Does it have a surface? What about its composition, density? One day, maybe we'll be able to answer these questions. And so, that's it for the super-Earths. Of course, the original list is much longer, and you can go check it out on the internet. Now, the best thing about all this is that these are planets that are better than the Earth. But we also know thousands of other exoplanets that are just close enough to ours. And the odds are, a few of them have at least some form of life. But they're very, very far away, so we have no way to check it out right now. Perhaps, down the road, we'll find some cool creatures on many of them.
At the end of December 2021, an underwater volcano with a rather exotic name Hunga Tonga woke up after several years of sleeping. It did that with so much energy and strength that people heard the eruption from over 100 miles away. Then it went back to sleep. But a couple of weeks later, it woke up again with a force 7 times greater than the first time. It broke the island above it in 2 parts. The lightning storm that started because of the eruption was the most intense in recorded history. The sound waves from the eruption traveled around the planet several times. Someone even heard a loud boom from it in Alaska. And it started the first known mega tsunami since ancient times. This tsunami took the lives of 2 people as far as Peru and caused trouble for 2 fishermen in California. But that's not all. This eruption could change the weather patterns on Earth for years. You may see the first proof in the summer of 2024, which is forecast to become much wetter than usual. Scientists believe the eruption was caused by gas building up to a critical point. Different minerals, including anhydrite quartz and sulfides, were building up for several months until they blocked the flow paths and sealed the gas within Hunga Tonga. Normally, when a volcano erupts, the fumes cause a temporary cooling effect on Earth's surface. But Hunga Tonga's eruption was different. It didn't produce much fumes, but released a massive amount of water vapor, roughly equal to 60,000 Olympic swimming pools. The intense heat of the eruption turned huge amounts of seawater into steam, which then blasted high into the atmosphere. All that water vapor ended up in the stratosphere, a layer of the atmosphere that's too dry to form clouds or rain. Scientists don't have any observations of volcanic eruptions like Hunga Tonga to predict its effects on our weather patterns. They can't tell exactly how long these effects might last either. This is because the only way to measure stratospheric water vapor is with satellites, which have only been around since 1979, and there hasn't been an eruption similar to Hunga Tonga in that time. Experts from different countries started analyzing satellite data right after the Hunga Tonga eruption. They wanted to find out how long water vapor would stay in the stratosphere, where it would go, and, most importantly, what this would mean for the planet. The first big result of the eruption, at least partially, was a huge hole in the stratosphere that was hanging on for several months in 2023. By the time it appeared, the water vapor had reached the polar stratosphere over Antarctica. In the following years, there wouldn't be enough water vapor left to enlarge this hole. It looks like Hunga Tonga will have just a minimal effect on global average temperatures. But there are some surprising, lasting regional impacts. One of the scientific models forecasts colder and wetter winters for northern Australia until about 2029. In North America, it predicts warmer winters, and Scandinavia could have even colder winters. This is just one study though, and one approach to understanding how the eruption of Hunga Tonga can change our weather. We do have at least one example from history when a volcano eruption changed the world. Over 2 centuries ago, in 1815, Mount Tambora erupted and caused the year without a summer. In the following year, the winter was unusually cold and wet weather across Europe and North America. A recent study confirms that 1816 wouldn't have been this cold without the volcanic eruption. The immediate effects of the eruption were catastrophic, with tsunamis destroying homes, claiming 10,000 lives, and 80,000 more who fell ill in the aftermath. The eruption of Mount Tambora was one of the strongest in the last 1,000 years. It had ejected an enormous amount of sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere, which quickly spread across the world. It resulted in the coldest year in at least the last 250 years. In May, frost wiped out most of the crops in New York, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont. By June, heavy snow covered the ground in Albany, New York, and Dennisville, Maine, and New Jersey had 5 straight nights of frost. The cold continued into late summer, which should have been the harvest season. In July, lakes and rivers were still frozen as far south as northwestern Pennsylvania, and frost stayed in Virginia until late August. Temperatures would drop from above normal summer highs to near freezing within just a few hours. The weather was completely unpredictable. Prices of food skyrocketed. The cost of oats for horses, which were the main mode of transportation, also rose sharply. Some people believe this situation inspired Carl Drees to invent the bicycle in 1817 as an alternative transportation method. Tambora changed weather patterns completely for not just 1, but 3 years. The whole planet got colder, and as crops failed, probably at least 1 million people starved. Scientists don't have solid evidence of volcano eruptions that have taken more lives than Tambora. But the Krakatoa eruption in Indonesia in 1883 is far more famous than Tambora because information about it spread worldwide via telegrams and photos. Its final blast was the loudest recorded sound in history, and people could hear it on 10% of the entire Earth's surface. The eruption started a tsunami with waves about half as tall as the Statue of Liberty. Still, it was less powerful than Tambora's eruption. The island that once hosted Krakatoa disappeared in the eruption, but new eruptions began less than 50 years later and created the Child of Krakatau cone in the center of the caldera of the old eruption. The new volcano still comes to life from time to time. Mount Vesuvius's eruption, which took down Pompeii, is one of the most well-known volcanic disasters in history. It took around 2,000 lives, much fewer than Tambora. According to a famous Roman author of that time, the eruption lasted 18 hours. Pompeii was covered by a layer of ash and pumice that was thicker than twice an average human height. The nearby coastline also changed dramatically. In today's world, the after effects of volcanic eruptions are often more dangerous than the eruption themselves. Thanks to advances in technology, we can now predict volcanic eruptions more accurately and use safety measures like evacuations and flight cancellations. But there's still a lot of risk that changes in weather patterns and drought all over the world, especially in areas like India, East Asia, and East Africa that are affected by monsoons. Volcano eruptions can also have effects you wouldn't probably expect, like the evolution of dinosaurs. These guys were once the size of cats, waiting for their time to shine. It came around 230 million years ago. This time is known as the Carnian pluvial episode. Before it, Pangaea was a dry and arid supercontinent. But then, there were 4 major volcanic events that pumped huge amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Global temperatures and humidity spiked because of it. These massive eruptions most likely happened because of the Wrangellia Large Igneous Province eruption in what is now British Columbia and Alaska. This prolonged volcanic activity created the right conditions for dinosaurs to blossom and diversify, and also for the rise of other groups, like modern conifers, ferns, crocodiles, turtles, insects, and early mammals. With higher temperatures and more rainfall, terrestrial plants have evolved, and humidity-loving ones have become dominant. Without those changes in the world, we could have a completely different natural history. There's some solid proof that volcanic activity has really changed the weather patterns back then. Scientists have found layers in the Earth's core that show different types of carbon. It means there were 4 massive releases of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The data on mercury and carbon together shows that the spike in mercury levels was thanks to a major volcanic event that affected the global carbon cycle, and not just local eruptions. Have you ever wondered how the world will go down in flames? Will it be due to zombies, extraterrestrial civilizations, or AI taking over? Nah, turns out it might actually be mosquitoes and scientists causing the chaos. It's funny how things created by nature aren't as threatening as the stuff that doesn't exist naturally. And you know what's on that list? Editing the DNA genome. Experiments with the genetic structure of living organisms can produce completely new species, and no one knows how nature will react to them. Let's look at an example of gene drive. So it all started with malaria mosquitoes. To somehow stop the growth of their population and prevent the spread of malaria, scientists created a gene that magically made mosquitoes only have male offspring. Several insects with this gene transmitted it to others during the mating season, and thus spread infertility. Scientists were able to stop malaria and destroy almost the entire mosquito population. But imagine if something went wrong in the mosquito genome and their population began to increase exponentially. Malaria could spread across all continents and create huge problems for all of us. Now, let's move from the little mosquito problem to a planetary disaster that can be caused by the desire for knowledge, which is deeply embedded in our nature. British cosmologist Martin Rees once said that we lived in the 1st century when human beings could determine the planet's future. It seems that it's so easy not to destroy yourself, but our nature is quite complicated. In pursuit of solving the mysteries of the universe, we have built a giant machine that, according to some people, may destroy our planet. And this device is the Large Hadron Collider. The main task of this giant machine is to accelerate particles and make them collide with one another. Scientists expect that the collider will help better understand the structure of our universe. In simple words, this is a miniature simulator of the universe. Using it may also shed light on the mystery of dark matter. During operation, the machine compresses atoms and makes them crash into one another at great speed. Perhaps this is how our universe appeared. Some people fear that a small black hole may form because of this collision. A tiny particle with a huge weight will pull all objects inside itself. Its mass will grow, but its size won't change much. As a result, it will compress the entire Earth and turn it into a ball measuring a little more than 300 feet across. At the same time, our planet will still have the same weight. A powerful gravitational pull on such a small area of matter can form a black hole that might later swallow up our entire solar system. There are also theories that the Hadron Collider could open a portal to a parallel universe with creepy monsters that would enter our world. But of course, such theories have little to do with science. Scientists have already launched the collider several times, and as you can see, nothing terrible has happened. But there is a small nuance. With each launch, scientists increase the speed of particles. Who knows what will happen when they accelerate them too much? According to Martin Rees, the probability that Earth will become a black hole is very, very small. Particles with a much larger energy charge fly in space faster than in the Hadron Collider, and nothing catastrophic happens. Okay, now let's go back to our genomic games to see what else can happen if we continue experimenting with nature. The main problem might be an imbalance in ecosystems. In the 19th century, sailors accidentally brought mice to Gough Island in the South Atlantic Ocean. Rodents had no dangerous enemies there, so their population began to grow. Mice began to displace dozens of birds from their home. The rodents attacked the chicks and reduced the population of entire species. Trying to save the birds, scientists decided to get rid of the mice, but these little creatures still managed to survive. As a result, the balance of the whole ecosystem was disrupted. Using gene drive to get rid of one species can lead to uncontrolled population growth of another. Imagine that malaria mosquitoes controlled the population of some flies. And what would happen if these flies lost their main natural enemy? The population of these flies would start destroying other species, and it would begin a chain of destructive events. All this suggests that playing with things that don't exist in nature is very dangerous. We worry a lot about how artificial intelligence can take over the world and eliminate us. Still, at the same time, we don't pay attention to our actions. Genome editing can lead to positive consequences, such as the appearance of healthier people, and destructive ones, like the creation of artificial bacteria that can cause serious health problems. In general, destroying other species is a trait inherent in humans. Because of our actions, many animals have disappeared from the face of the earth. Moreover, we even destroy each other. Such aggressive behavior is our nature. And artificial intelligence doesn't have anthropomorphic properties. Its logic may be completely different from ours, and instead of destroying people, it might strive to save them. And we have something to save us from. Remember the giant asteroid that erased more than half of the living creatures on Earth? The fall of the space rock caused a massive blast wave, a tsunami, earthquakes, and dust clouds that covered the sun. Dinosaurs and other animals couldn't survive in such conditions. But what if something similar happens these days? Fortunately, we're better prepared than dinosaurs. Firstly, we have the technology to track giant meteorites and calculate their trajectory. And artificial intelligence can also help us with this. Secondly, we can destroy an asteroid before it reaches us. Several powerful rockets will quickly deal with any space rock and turn it into cosmic dust. Moreover, we will know in advance about its approach. But suppose that a huge stone the size of dozens of Everests will fly towards us. In that case, humanity should hurry with Mars colonization. But don't worry. Observing the sky shows that large asteroids capable of causing severe damage to our planet are moving in a different direction. The most giant known asteroid that could collide with Earth might do so in 2088. The probability that it will fall on our planet is 1 in 50,000, so you shouldn't have to worry about threats from outer space. What lies in the bowels of our planet is much more dangerous. Millions of tons of magma and hot gases can burst to the surface through destructive volcanic eruptions. More than 70,000 years ago, a large-scale eruption threw a tremendous amount of ash into the air, which then floated in the atmosphere in the form of a giant gray cloud for a long time. As a result, Earth's surface cooled down by several degrees, which led to one of the most massive extinctions in the history of our planet. Some eruptions happen not only inside volcanoes. There's such a thing as flood basalt. A colossal magma bubble accumulates under a vast area and begins to seep through faults in different parts. Magma slowly goes out there for many years and destroys all living things around. And the worst thing about this situation is that we can't do anything about it. Humanity has learned to track meteorites in space, but we're still not good at predicting a volcano's behavior. Even if we find out that some giant rock will wake up in the next 6 months, there's nothing we can do about that. We won't be able to prevent an eruption. All we can do is evacuate people from dangerous territory. We have no protection against earthquakes, and even more so, we can't stop the emission of ash into the atmosphere. It's possible that artificial intelligence will help us with this in the future, but right now, we're powerless. As you can see, there are several options for the end of the world for humanity, and they're all slightly different from those imposed by pop culture and the media. In the end, is it right to look for threats from space or artificial intelligence? Let's cut the Earth in half. You can see all of its layers. Here's the inner core. It's about 40 times hotter than the inside of your oven. That's the mantle, an ocean of hot lava. Here comes the crust of the Earth, the solid surface on which our civilization lives. But if you look up, there are many layers besides the atmosphere and the ozone layer. Scientists recently discovered a strange bubble here, which protects our planet from radiation. And nope, it's not the Earth's magnetic field. This bubble is made of radio waves. Our planet grows like a Christmas tree in the radio spectrum. But we're interested in low-frequency waves, the ones that let us keep in touch with submarines. So, radio waves are like light waves, or regular ocean waves. Look at this one. The distance between the two peaks is the wavelength, and the number of these waves over a period of time is the frequency. For example, there are 10 waves in this interval of 1 second. So, can you guess the frequency of this wave? Yep, it's 10 Hertz. Cell phones use waves with a frequency of 300 to 3000 megahertz. So, add 6 more zeros to that number. But waves of that frequency don't penetrate barriers well. Think of how you lose your cell phone connection when you're driving through a tunnel. That's because there is metal inside. It's a conductive material that weakens the radio waves a lot. Salt water is also a kind of conductor. So, if the submarine is deep enough, the thick layer of water weakens the signal, and we lose communication. To maintain it, we send fewer waves but make them longer. In the same amount of time, the frequency of the short waves will be much higher than the frequency of the long waves. That's why they're called very low frequency waves. But, as it turns out, these waves travel all over the Earth and even into space. This is where things get interesting. The waves collide with particles of radiation from the sun. We think of the sun as a friendly giant giving us light and heat, but it actually emits a lot of harmful radiation. Each flare, or the electrical discharge of material on our home star, causes an even greater burst of radiation. These particles fly to our planet, just as radio waves do. They travel 93 million miles from the Sun to Earth in 8 minutes and crash into our bubble, which acts as a shield. Basically, radiation particles from the Sun accumulate in the radiation belts around the Earth. Our planet's magnetic field traps them, and a recently discovered bubble of very low-frequency waves lies right below this radiation belt. It helps us repel some of the harmful emissions. Analysis of old studies confirmed that the radiation belts used to be much lower and closer to Earth. But when our civilization began to use radio actively, our waves raised that belt higher. No one expected such an effect from simple radio waves, but it'll give us a way to protect astronauts in the future. When you're on Earth, its magnetic field keeps you safe from radiation. You can physically see it when charged solar wind particles make the air particles at the poles of our planet glow. This is an aurora. Next time you admire this beauty, know that it's actually the Earth saving you from some extremely harmful rays. But if you're outside the Earth's magnetic field, somewhere in space, I have bad news for you. Nothing protects you there. This is a big problem for astronauts who spend months on the International Space Station. Perhaps scientists will learn to create protective bubbles of very low frequency waves around space stations and spacecraft. The same is true for other planets. We're probably going to colonize Mars. There is no magnetic field there, and nothing can protect you from radiation. But if you create an artificial bubble there, you can reduce the harmful radiation. Another invisible bubble protecting us is the atmosphere. It's like a layer cake or an onion. Each level of the atmosphere has its own properties. The lowest layer that we live in is the troposphere. This layer contains 80% of the weight of all the air on the planet. It's also the main place where water vapor lives. And this is where the machine called weather works. The sun sends rays of energy to the Earth. Our planet's surface reflects them and heats the air in the troposphere. This makes it move and change places with the cold air, so all the wind, cyclones, storms, and tornadoes only happen in the troposphere, up to about 7.5 miles high. That's why commercial planes fly at an altitude of around 6 miles. The wind or other bad weather conditions hardly affect this area, and the air here is not as dense as it is down on Earth. Flying 1 mile above sea level is like moving through a biscuit. It's hard, but at a 6-mile altitude, flying feels like moving through light whipped cream. The plane almost feels no resistance, so it's a win-win. They save fuel and keep the passengers safe. A couple of significant downsides are that it's very cold and you can't breathe there. It's cold because there are very few air molecules to absorb heat from the ground and transfer it to each other. You wouldn't be able to breathe here for the same reason. That's why planes are equipped with oxygen masks, just in case. Let's go a little here. This is the stratosphere. There's even fewer air molecules up here, and that's where the weather probes fly. They're the kind of small balloons with computers people use to predict the weather. This part of the atmosphere also contains the well-known ozone layer. This is our shield against harmful ultraviolet radiation. Ozone is almost the same as oxygen, except it has 3 atoms in it. When harmful ultraviolet rays enter our atmosphere, they crash into the O3 molecule. The ray breaks the molecule into O2 and another oxygen atom. The ray itself is converted into heat, but the ozone regenerates quickly. A single oxygen atom joins the O2, and the ozone molecule is ready to protect us again. It's the invisible shield that protects us from radiation. It gave birth to all life on Earth. As our civilization developed, we started to emit freon gas into the atmosphere. We used to fill our old refrigerators with it. A single chlorine atom would detach from a freon molecule when in the air, and then it would bind a single oxygen atom. Now, the ozone can't regenerate like it used to. Fortunately, we banned the use of such harmful gases, and the ozone layer began to regenerate. Scientists expect it to fully recover in the middle of the 21st century. The stratosphere ends at about 31 miles. The next layer is the mesosphere, the coldest of them all. On average, it's about -140 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 5 times colder than your freezer. This is the layer of the atmosphere where incoming meteors start to ignite because of friction in the air. Then they will eventually burn up completely. The air here is too thin for airplanes or balloons to fly, but it's still too dense for satellites. So, this layer of the atmosphere is not well studied. The next layer extends from 55 miles above sea level to about 500. That's a little more than the distance between Las Vegas and San Francisco. Kármán line is situated in this layer of the atmosphere. This is the boundary between our planet and space. The thermosphere is where all our spacecraft and satellites fly. It's also home to the International Space Station. The temperature rises extremely. The air here is about 10 times hotter than your oven can produce. It's all due to solar activity. But you would never be able to feel this heat. The air molecules that carry the heat here are so small that you would literally float between them. Imagine a giant pool with only 3 drops of water. That's the thermosphere. And the highest layer of our atmosphere is the exosphere. This is the widest layer of our air bubble. Scientists believe its boundaries are about halfway to the moon at 120,000 miles. This is the point where the pressure of solar radiation begins to exceed the Earth's gravity. It's still part of our atmosphere. This means that astronauts who went on various space missions and have been on the ISS have actually never left the Earth's atmosphere. For decades now, scientists have been discovering new planets outside our solar system. By 2023, we've found more than 5,000 of them, and many of these exoplanets could potentially even have life. Now, if you're ready for a wild ride through space, let's find out what potentially habitable planets we've discovered in the last few years. LP890-9b and LP890-9c. Buckle up because we're heading to LP890-9. A red dwarf star located a whopping 105 light-years away from Earth. This star is quite cool compared to our Sun, in terms of temperature, of course. It has a temperature of about 4,700 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, this little guy may be small, but it's packed with surprises. For example, 2 exoplanets orbiting around it. Moreover, both of these planets are likely terrestrial, meaning they are rocky, just like Earth. First up, we have LP90-9b, which was discovered in 2022 using the TESS telescope and later confirmed by the Speculoos telescope. This planet is a super-Earth, weighing in at about 13 times the mass of our own planet. It's also slightly bigger than Earth, with a radius about 1.3 times larger. And if you thought Mercury's orbit around the Sun was quick, just wait until you hear about LP890-9b. It takes about 3 days to complete 1 lap around its star. Imagine falling asleep in freezing winter and waking up in hot summer. But the real showstopper here is LP890-9c. This one was discovered by the Speculoos telescope. It's a bit further out from the star and takes a leisurely 2.5 times longer to orbit than LP890-9b. It's also a bit larger than Earth. But its real claim to fame is its location within the habitable zone of its star. That means it could potentially have liquid water on its surface and a climate suitable for life. Now this planet becomes a prime candidate for studying its atmosphere using the James Webb Space Telescope. But hold on. It's not all sunshine and rainbows for LP890-9c. It's also really close to its star, meaning it's full of radiation that could potentially make it less habitable. And to top it off, it's tidally locked, just like our moon. That means one side of the planet is always facing the star and is incredibly hot, while the other is always in the dark and really cold. Scientific models suggest that this planet could be more like Venus in terms of its atmosphere and climate. And Venus isn't known for being human-friendly. But despite these challenges, LP890-9c is still a fascinating exoplanet worth studying further. Who knows what secrets it may hold? Let's move on to the next candidates. GJ1002b and GJ1002c. An international team of scientists, led by researchers at the Instituto de Astrofísica de Canarias, has found 2 Earth-like planets just 16 light-years away from our solar system. They both orbit a red dwarf star called GJ1002. Our Sun is a yellow dwarf, which means that GJ1002 is much cooler and fainter than our own Sun. But that's okay. Both planets are very close to its star, so it shouldn't be too cold or dark on them. These planets, called GJ1002b and GJ1002c, are both in the habitability zone of their star, meaning they could potentially support life. Also, both of them have masses similar to that of Earth. GJ1002b is the inner planet and takes about 10 days to orbit its star, while GJ1002c takes a little over 21 days. These planets are great candidates for studying their atmospheres and could even be targets for future missions to search for signs of life. The most important thing is that these two planets could potentially support life, and that's pretty cool. Plus, the fact that they're located so close to us means that we might be able to visit them someday. Well, maybe not us personally, but you know. And maybe one day, we'll even find some extraterrestrial life on one of these planets. Now that would be out of this world. But moving on to the next one. Kepler 1649c. Kepler 1649c, also known as the Lost Exoplanet, was rediscovered in 2022 by scientists using data from NASA's Kepler spacecraft. This exoplanet is located about 300 light-years away from Earth and orbits a small, cool star called Kepler 1649. It's about the same size as Earth, and just like the previous ones, it's located in the habitable zone of its star. Initially, the data about this planet was discarded. A special computer program called RoboVetter, written to automatically sift through the volumes of Kepler data, labeled this candidate as a false positive. In other words, the program thought it was just some kind of an error or interference. Fortunately, the researchers double-checked such things, and when rechecking the data, they managed to rescue poor Kepler 1649c. Now we know that this is a terrestrial planet just like Earth, and if it really does contain water, there could even be life there. But don't pack your bags just yet. There are still many unknowns about Kepler 1649c. For example, we don't know what its atmosphere is like or what kind of surface it has. It's also possible that the planet is tidally locked, just like LP 890-9c. That would be, unpleasant. That's why Kepler 1649c is definitely worth further study. Maybe it turns out to be a perfect place for us to set up a vacation home in the future. Just make sure to bring plenty of sunscreen since the planet is pretty close to its star and things could get pretty toasty. Kepler 1638b. This exoplanet is located about 5,000 light-years from Earth in the constellation Cygnus. It's also located in the habitable zone of its star. It was discovered in 2020 by the Kepler spacecraft through the process called transiting. They basically take a bunch of photos of the star at different times. After that, the programs analyze these photos and look for small spots and dots on them. These tiny dips in brightness may mean that a planet was passing by the star. Kepler 1638b is a bit of an oddball compared to most exoplanets we've found so far. It's about 4 times the mass of Earth and has a radius about 2 times that of Earth, making it a super-Earth exoplanet. Its orbital period is about 260 days, which is quite close to our Earth, and that's great. Finally, at least somewhere, winter and summer will flow normally. Kepler 1638b could have some liquid water there. That's why it's also a good candidate for further study, to see if it could potentially support life. Let's hope that we'll find out more about this planet in the future. And finally, the last one. Kepler 438b. Kepler 438b is an exoplanet located approximately 640 light-years away from Earth in the constellation Lyra. It was discovered in 2015 by the Kepler Space Telescope. One of the most interesting things about Kepler 438b is its size and location. It's about the same size as Earth and also orbits within the habitable zone of its star. But there are a few catches. For one, Kepler 438b orbits around a red dwarf star, which are known for their high levels of solar radiation and flare-ups. This could make the surface of the planet too hostile for life as we know it. In addition, Kepler 438b has a much shorter year. only around 35 Earth days long. This could lead to extreme temperature fluctuations on the planet's surface, but maybe it's home to some hardy extraterrestrial life forms that have adapted to its unique conditions. Or maybe not. Either way, it's definitely worth keeping an eye on. This is a small list of exoplanets that we've discovered in recent years. Now, with the use of new technologies, we'll be able to find new exoplanets much more often. Let's hope that at least a few of them will really be inhabited.
Whoa! A wall of fire spreads around the epicenter of the impact. It burns everything in its path. The waves raised by the explosion cover large cities, and earthquakes are so strong that giant skyscrapers fall like a house of cards. So, these are the possible consequences of the collision with the first interstellar object in history to visit our solar system. We discovered it in 2017, but we're still not sure what it is: an asteroid, a comet, or a spaceship of some outer space civilization. So far, scientists have named it Oumuamua. Sounds like a Hawaiian cow. Well, whatever it is, its speed is much faster than other asteroids, about 54 miles per second. At that speed, you could cross the US from coast to coast in less than 3 minutes. So this asteroid could travel from Earth to the Sun in about 2 months. By comparison, our rockets can travel up to 17,000 miles per hour. The same trip across the United States would take them about 9 minutes. So, many scientists speculate that this is an artificial object created by a very advanced civilization. Okay. The shape of the object supports this theory. It's long and narrow and resembles a spaceship. It's about half a mile long, way bigger than the Eiffel Tower. Scientists decided to see if Oumuamua was really someone's spaceship and pointed some radio telescopes at it. If the civilization on that ship had used communication or scanned us with their tech, we would have known about it. But there was complete silence. Kind of like that. Not a single radio wave. But that doesn't disprove the theory of outer space civilization. To find out for sure, we decided to determine the weight of the object. To do that, we use light. More precisely, its reflection. You see, different materials reflect light differently. We take an unknown black stone, for example. It absorbs almost all the light, reflecting almost nothing. Check out the catalog, it's charcoal. Knowing the size and material of the object, we can determine its weight. So, we need to see how much light this object reflects. And when scientists pointed their telescopes at Oumuamua, they learned that it reflects colors that match with iron and also with some solid rocks. And Oumuamua was flashing all the time. A bright flash. Then it would slowly fade, and then it would start to shine again. This means it was spinning. And it wasn't going around its axis like an arrow. It rotated chaotically, moving its edges up and down. Any artificial object or spacecraft would have been torn apart by such overloads. But Oumuamua is still intact. That means it's made of super hard materials that keep it from falling apart. And it's not hollow like a spaceship. It's one solid body. Hey, like me. The astounding speed of this object makes it pretty mysterious. Some comets can have the same or even higher speed, but they also have a kind of rocket effect. So when a spaceship starts from the launch pad, you see fire bursting out of its engines. Every second, the rocket mixes fuel with oxygen, ignites them, and ejects them at a tremendous speed. According to the laws of physics, this is like pushing off a wall. The rocket sort of jumps up from the combustion gases it throws down. That's how the rocket creates thrust and accelerates. Comets work on a similar principle. The sun's rays hit the surface of the comet. Light elements like ice start to evaporate. That gas goes one way, the comet goes the other. Just like a rocket, the comet is pushing off the evaporating gas and accelerates. This gas also forms the comet's long tail. It's as if the massive rock is dragging all this gas behind it. I can relate. Or it's like a car pulls air with it when it goes at high speed. But Oumuamua is not a comet, and it doesn't have that tail, and it doesn't have the same rocket effect as a comet. So it couldn't have accelerated to that speed. But some scientists believe that Oumuamua used to have a tail. Although we discovered it in 2017, it entered our solar system in 1995. and it was hit by the sun's rays even back then. When we discovered this asteroid, it had already lost about 95% of its mass. It simply evaporated. Other scientists believe that Oumuamua got this velocity during its birth, somewhere far away in another star system or nebula. Perhaps it was a dramatic collision of some exoplanet with another cosmic object. The colossal explosive energy of the collision threw the elongated shard into outer space. Or it could have been a supernova explosion. When a star reaches the end of its lifespan, it becomes a red giant. It's an inflated version of the star, hundreds of times bigger. Then it shrinks and explodes with tremendous force. The blast waves can travel many light years away from the epicenter, and it's one of the brightest events in the universe. So, the supernova might have torn some exoplanet to pieces. One of them, Oumuamua, gained a lot of energy and speed and began its long journey toward Earth. This might explain why Oumuamua keeps spinning so wildly. But recently, scientists published a theory that Oumuamua may be a giant block of ice. The kind of ice we're used to is water, H2O, but Oumuamua could be nitrogen ice, N2. It may have remained intact in interstellar space for 500 million years. And when it arrived in our solar system, nitrogen ice could have reflected 2/3 of the sun's rays, so it didn't heat up as much. That explains why Oumuamua doesn't have a tail. You can find the same nitrogen ice on Pluto, as well as on Triton, one of Neptune's moons. So Oumuamua comes from a similar icy exoplanet. But we can find out for sure only by sending a space probe to it. Scientists came up with a plan for that called Project Lyra. The problem is that Oumuamua is leaving our solar system at tremendous speeds, much faster than our rockets can fly. And we need to catch up with this space rock as quickly as possible before it gets too far away. To do this, we can use a gravity maneuver. First, the space probe makes a flyby of Jupiter. It passes close to it to take advantage of its gravity to accelerate. After that, the probe will head towards the Sun, and it'll fly around it as close as possible to fire like a catapult towards the space rock. The second option for reaching the asteroid is to use microprobes. We have to launch about 1,000 of them into orbit. They should be no heavier than a match. Each of them will have a light sail the size of a boxing ring. Then we'll focus a powerful laser beam from the ground onto this sail. It will allow us to accelerate the probe to about 20% of the speed of light. It shouldn't go too fast not to fly past the asteroid. It should be able to enter its orbit or land on it. But if we're too slow, Oumuamua will leave our solar system before we can catch up with it. It'll be a great experience because in the future, we'll be able to use such asteroids as a space taxi. All we have to do is enter the orbit of such an interstellar asteroid or even land on it. Then we would keep moving through space at incredible speeds without using any fuel at all. This would be a great option for traveling long distances or to deliver supplies to other star systems. So why should we be afraid of such objects? Well, a collision with an asteroid the size of Oumuamua could wipe out an entire state. If it were to hit somewhere in the ocean, it could cause waves taller than our skyscrapers. Scientists are anxious to find ways to protect us against such objects. One of them is ramming. If we spot a potentially hazardous object, we could send a spaceship towards it, pedal to the metal. The spacecraft will have to ram the asteroid at an angle that will move its trajectory just a little bit. Moving it too much on a cosmic scale would only dramatically change the asteroid's final destination, and we only need to get the asteroid past our planet. We can also create a controlled explosion on the asteroid. It's based on the same principle. The force of the explosion would have to shift the trajectory of the asteroid slightly, or smash a giant rock into smaller pieces. Asteroids up to 80 feet wide would burn up completely in our atmosphere due to friction against the air. Rocks between 80 feet and half a mile in size may not burn up completely and cause local damage. Anything larger is considered very hazardous. You think? The traditional method of science fiction is to put rocket engines on the asteroid. Then we can not only change the trajectory of the space rock, but also control it. And we can use it against other asteroids. It would be something like space billiards.
The James Webb Space Telescope, an astounding piece of equipment built to outperform the Hubble Space Telescope, has made a terrifying and amazing discovery that might completely change our perception of the universe. It has successfully detected a faint glow coming from a staggering 7 trillion miles away. Can this glow be shining city lights coming from some mysterious extraterrestrial world galaxies away from us? Well, let's start from the beginning. A few years ago, NASA's Infrared Spitzer Space Telescope helped us spot a family of 7 rocky exoplanets orbiting the same star. This star is known as TRAPPIST-1, and recently, our new infrared powerhouse, the James Webb Telescope, has measured the temperature of one of those distant worlds. It was a planet called TRAPPIST-1b. Unfortunately, it turned out that this Earth-like planet was totally uninhabitable. Astronomers took James Webb's mid-infrared camera, called MIRI, and looked at the planet's thermal emissions. We can picture the whole process as scientists using heat-sensing Terminator vision. The results were quite disappointing. TRAPPIST-1b turned out to be scorching. Its average temperature was around 450 degrees F. That's as hot as in an oven. Plus, the planet most likely doesn't have any atmosphere. At the same time, this discovery was another record-breaking first for the telescope, which had already produced some newsworthy results by that time. It was the first time researchers detected any form of light emitted by a small and relatively cool exoplanet similar to the rocky planets in our own solar system. No previous telescope had enough sensitivity to measure such dim, mid-infrared light. When 7 TRAPPIST-1 exoplanets were first discovered, the astronomical community was ecstatic. That's because all those faraway worlds were about the size of our home planet and located in their star's habitable zone. It's the region that is just the right distance away from a star for liquid water to exist on a planet's surface. Thus, the planetary system became the best place to look for rocky planets with an atmosphere. But don't get too excited yet. These planets aren't likely to become new worlds for humans to explore, mostly because the TRAPPIST-1 planets are totally out of our reach at the moment. They're just too far away, at a whopping 235 trillion miles away. Their star is also much smaller and redder than our Sun. It's classified as an M-dwarf star. In our home Milky Way galaxy, there are twice as many of such stars as there are stars like the Sun, and they're also twice as likely to have rocky planets orbiting them. It's probably not surprising that astronomers are very interested in such stars. They're the main targets for seeking potentially habitable planets, and it's also way easier and more convenient to observe rocky planets around such smaller stars. But there's a catch. M-dwarfs are more active than our Sun. They frequently flare and spew high-energy rays which are likely to be extremely damaging to planets' atmospheres and any forms of extraterrestrial life. When researchers examined TRAPPIST-1b before, their observations weren't sensitive enough to determine whether this world had an atmosphere, or if it was just a barren rock. But now, we know. The planet is tidally locked to its star, which means that one of its sides always faces the star, while the other is stuck in perpetual darkness. The latest simulations suggest that if this planet had an atmosphere, its temperatures would be much lower since the air would redistribute the heat around both sides of the planet. Unfortunately, the James Webb Telescope recorded much hotter temperatures than needed for such a favorable scenario. It indicates the absence of an atmosphere and knocks the planet off our list of possibly habitable worlds. But the main excitement here isn't actually the features of TRAPPIST-1b. The main takeaway is that James Webb is capable of making such kinds of measurements. It'll help us explore the atmospheres and temperatures of many other distant worlds.
The human body is this perfectly balanced machine, right? Well, not when I'm using it. Normally, all its parts work seamlessly together to keep us thriving and, well, alive. Each of our organs is essential for our day-to-day activities, from breathing, walking, talking, and coming up with bright ideas that push humanity forward. But are they really essential? Do we really need all those body parts? Or are some of them just ancient relics that we just got stuck with in this weird game of evolution? Take wisdom teeth, for example. Nah, somebody already took mine. Yeah, they're those pairs of teeth stuck in the back of your mouth you often have to go to the dentist for. They're also known as third molars, and while they can be used to chew food, A lot of people think they're just unnecessary. And get this, around 22% of people worldwide don't even have all 4 of them. When they do grow in, they're the most likely to become impacted, which means they get stuck in the jawbone sideways and can't properly come through the gums. It's all because our jaws are often too small to accommodate these extra guys. Some smart scientists think that's because we've evolved to have smaller jaws over time. Recent evidence also shows that what we eat as kids might also be to blame, but it's hard to know for sure. Apparently, munching on hard-to-chew foods like raw veggies and nuts can actually stimulate jaw growth, while eating soft processed foods can kinda stunt it. And that leaves little space for our back teeth to come in and, do their thing. Will they disappear altogether in the future? I guess we human mammals will just have to wait and see. Now let's talk about the vomeral nasal organ, or as I like to call it, the nose's secret instrument. Ooh. You see, rodents and other mammals have this awesome ability to communicate with each other using chemical signals called pheromones. And guess what? They have a special organ called the vomeral nasal organ, or VNO, that helps them detect these pheromones. Here's where it gets interesting. While most adult humans have something resembling a VNO in their nose, it turns out that it's basically a useless remnant. Neuroscientists even say that if you look at the anatomy of this organ, you won't see any cells that resemble those of similar organs from other mammals. Also, this organ in humans doesn't seem to be communicating with the brain either. Now, it's not all bad news. Even though the human VNO is pretty useless, it looks like it still might respond to some pheromones. Will humans keep this organ on their evolutionary to-do list? For now, I'd place it in the maybe pile. Now, here's a tail. Animals that feature tails need these structures for a lot of things. Some need it for balance, others for navigation, while some need it to attract potential partners. But did you know that when we're just a few weeks old in our mother's belly, we actually have tails too? That's right, we have a whole little tail complete with vertebrae. As we develop, that tail magically disappears and we're left with our trusty tailbone. Humans and apes are unique in that we don't have tails, unlike other primates. It's a mystery why apes lost their tails, but we can all agree that it makes us stand out in a crowd. However, once in a blue moon, a human is born with a little vestigial tail. Cute, right? Well, don't get too excited, because these tails don't have vertebrae and can sometimes be associated with a tricky condition of the spine. Either way, these tails are usually harmless and can be easily removed with a quick surgery. And let's be honest, it's not like we're going to miss it. After all, who needs a tail when you have arms and legs to get around? Plus, can you imagine trying to find pants that fit with a tail sticking out the back? Not a good look. There's little to no chance humans will end up needing tails in the future, so I'm guessing the tailbones are bye-bye in future generations. Humans also have a funny little fold of membrane in the inner corner of the eyes, called the plica semilunaris. It's basically what's left of a third eyelid, which is still found in some animals, like gorillas and other primates. But here's the funny thing. Even our close relatives, the chimpanzees, have this little fold that appears to be useless too. So we're not alone in this eye quirkiness. Speaking of unusual membranes, they serve a variety of functions in different animals, such as protecting the eye from dirt and moisture, or hiding the iris from predators. Some species can even see through their transparent membranes when they're underwater or underground. Now, the reasons why we humans lost our third eyelid is still a bit of a mystery. Maybe changes in our habitat and eye physiology made it unnecessary, or maybe we just evolved to be too cool for a third eyelid. Who knows? With or without vestigial organs, it's interesting to imagine what humans might look like in the future. Many organs have become obsolete because of our lifestyle changes. Care to have a peek into what we might look like in the future? And in the same vein, or artery, have you heard of the concept of text claw? It's where you spend so much time typing on your phone or laptop that your hand starts to cramp up like a claw. And that's just one of the physical changes that could happen to us if we don't take care of our bodies in this tech-heavy world. But it's not just our hands that are affected. We could end up with 90-degree elbows from constantly holding our devices at that angle, and even a smaller brain from all the distractions and information overload. Now, I know what you're thinking. We just can't give up technology and go back to the Stone Age. And you're right, we don't have to. But we do need to be aware of the potential negative effects and take steps to reduce their damage. That's why a team of designers put their creative efforts together to present Mindy, a future human whose body has physically changed due to the constant and never-ending use of smartphones, laptops, and other types of maniacal devices. While Mindy's exaggerated changes may not be in our future, the concerns behind them are real. So, what can we do? Well, one suggestion is to take regular breaks from our screens and stretch our legs a little. Maybe even encourage some office yoga or dance parties to get the blood flowing. We don't have to give up technology completely, but we do need to be mindful of its effects on our bodies and minds. Many years in the future, we might even get smaller in size. One scientist reckons that if we were smaller, our bodies would need less energy, which would come in super handy in our increasingly crowded planet. It's funny to think about how different our lives are now compared to when we were hunter-gatherers. Back then, we only had to interact with a handful of people each day. But now, remembering people's names is a super important trait, and it might even be something we grow to become better at. Or, technology might actually play a role in our evolution. Scientists believe that we could one day have implants in our brains that help us remember people's names. It's like having a biological phone book directly in your body. Wouldn't that be cool? Who knows? Maybe in the future, we'll even have visible technology as part of our appearance. Imagine having an artificial eye that can see different colors and visuals. And don't even get me started on what we might look like if we colonize Mars. With the lower gravity, our bodies could change in all sorts of ways. We might have longer arms and legs, or even insulating body hair like our Neanderthal ancestors. It's hard to pinpoint what we might look like in the future without very precise data to back the models up. But it's fair to say these changes will be interesting, to say the least. As for me, well, it's too late to say the least. I've said over 1,400 words here already.